All right, so we are going to discuss part one, how you feel about the way elders age in America and what dynamics you see playing an important role in detecting, preventing, and reporting elder and or dependent adult abuse.
Um, yeah, I feel like I feel like I've talked about this in other classes a little bit, just that first part, but um, I don't know. It's like our culture is so individual oriented, um, that and so productivity oriented
Mm-hmm.
that like you become useless and sort of, I don't know, this may be hyperbolic, but like you're like useless and annoying and just sort of dead weight if um
Definitely by like capitalism standards.
yeah, yeah, and we don't, yeah, we're just like, oh, okay, you've aged out of being useful. And so now you go off and hang out with all the other people who are in your weird category. And I feel like the way, like, there's this almost like disgust with, well, there is disgust with aging, like the amount of ads
Mhm.
for not looking older. And I remember people when I was like 23, people being like, oh, so jealous of the 21-year-olds. And I was like, what is I mean, we're all still children. Like, this is not,
Right.
so yeah, there's just something that feels very, there's a lot of fear of aging and no value given to
Yeah.
what comes with age, like experience and knowledge and tradition. And I was thinking also about just like, yeah, that sort of separation, and how it fits in with like the individual culture where my grandma got sick and lived with my parents and I when I was a kid. And that was like pretty unusual,
Mhm.
where I think most people would have just like put her in a home. Um, but that also was something that my parents were able to do because of certain privileges. Like my dad is a professor, so his schedule was really flexible, and like we had enough space in the house for her to have a bedroom.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, had like not everybody is going to be able to do that. We don't have a society that's set up in a way where it's just like we don't have a society set up in a way to support people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Kind of case in point. Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking about kind of a lot like while you were sharing. And I guess like right now I'm just thinking too, like I hadn't thought about this in a minute, even while doing the reading, but like my grandma also spent like the last few years of her life like with our family. And I honestly don't think our family was set up well to really actually care for her and like socialize her. And it was really, really sad. Like I remember she was like in like we had like a bi-level house and our rooms were upstairs, like one of my family members was downstairs, but like was gone during the night for work, and then she was like in a hospital bed, and I just remember hearing her like calling for help in the middle of the night, and then I would was like in middle school and I would go like get her water, and um like we didn't have like our family didn't have the support or like the money to put her in like a place because she was from Oregon and we were in Indiana. So like she moved all the way from like people that knew her, her community, into our like small home without like really great care. And I also know like things can sometimes be sketchy in homes, and that's also like also sad because then you're with strangers. But I was just thinking about like on the topic of like productivity and society and capitalism and being useless, but also just like I'm thinking about people that are like unhoused and like get to that point where they have no network, and then like the society doesn't support it. And if you have more money, you have more resources, to be able to maybe set yourself up in this society to like age better, before you die. But then that also, like, if you do have money, I knew of someone that I worked with, their dad was like dying of terminal cancer and got like a new partner, in the last like year and a half of his life. And there was like a whole like I remember they took the like new wife to court because it felt very much like she was abusing, like it was like a financial abuse thing, because he was just like, dying slowly and like losing some of his cognitive capacity. And then like he had like a pretty solid pension from working in the fire department. And I don't know. So I guess there's like having money, having resources can, on one hand, maybe set you up better for better care, better support. And on the other hand, maybe make you even more of a risk for being taken advantage of or abused, like financially. So yeah. One other thought too was like what you were talking about, like individualistic and like not finding value in like the elderly, is like in other cultures, there's elders that are like looked to for wisdom, and widespread, we don't have that as like a value in any of the like pockets of society, like my, white lower middle class subcultures have like ever embodied that. And I think that's, relatively the norm in white America. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like relationships, there's supposed to be some productive element, sort of. And something I've thought about this as I've tried to build relationships with elders and reflected on like the only sort of cross power relationships I've had, there's been this, it's like a teacher. And so it's very confusing to translate that into like, where's the personal relationship there?
yeah.
And yeah, that just doesn't feel like part of the culture that is oriented to like grinding out product.
Yeah. 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 Back to like productivity and not relational, not connected to one another truly, not connected to our bodies. There's a theme about this
Yeah.
society we live in, not being conducive to life at any stage, really, unless you have access, means, and fall on the levels of what's stratified as giving you power and access. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's this like, because we're so scared of aging, I feel like, I don't know, there was like the example in the book about the um woman who like sort of jokingly mentioned forgetting to turn off the gas stove sometimes.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about that example, like my mom is 74 now, which technically falls into the elder category, but like she's just someone who for her whole life would forget. Like that would happen if she was like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. She's just sort of a forgetful person.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about how we interpret things, like just having that bias of looking at a person and clocking, like, oh, you're old and you are going to therefore have these things. And so you hear a story like that and you instantly jump to this can't be safe in a
Yeah.
way that you wouldn't if that person was 40.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, maybe neurodivergent
Right,
and
exactly.
or a stressed out single parent that is like doing their best to like make it by. Yeah. And forgetful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to move on to number two?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Child abuse mandated reporting. Could you foresee a few situations where you're mandated to report, but you could decide not to do so, even risking penalties and or consequences for your license, the child, your client, or and other. Come up with a couple of those.
Yeah. Well, for one, I feel like I don't have like strong confidence and clarity in like what even like the laws and statutes are. So like little fuzzy there, just naming that. But I think like I'll start with like kind of a vague idea because I don't know if I have like explicit examples like popping into mind, but like trying to like assess the whole situation and see like, okay, maybe there's this one thing like, okay, I guess there is an example like I think it was in the book about a parent or a mother like stealing groceries. So it's like, okay, you're breaking the law, you know, bad. But like, what is the whole context? Oh, it's expensive to live. Oh, like parent got fired. Oh, um, it's clearly meeting an unmet need. And I know that like I think from the reading, it doesn't necessarily rank stealing as like that high of an offense, but it's just as an example, like what is the issues this family or this child is facing that the environment that they live in, the society that they live in, the culture, community, whatever, is not affording them what's needed to maintain a life that may be deemed, quote, more ethical and looking to find ways to support the family, whether that's like helping locate different services that maybe provide meals or food to families that fall under certain categories of need, um, or yeah, like finding the list of resources of like what food banks are available or connecting them maybe to a case manager that can help them figure out how to get set up on food stamps if they're not already, or maybe file for disability if it's a situation, or file for unemployment if there's something like that going on. So yeah, that's really one example, but I think like my main idea is like see what's really actually happening and why is this thing that might not be great, why is that happening, what need is that meeting, and can we like find the underlying issue and best support. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really agree. And I think something I was thinking about a lot in the reading and then also when you were talking is like that I find myself really struggling with the being licensed means having to work within these systems that are like quite flawed. And so yeah, like situations where like CPS has a
Mm.
lot of issues, like the foster care system has a lot of issues, like there, and so just thinking about like I think there was an example of siblings getting separated. So things like that, just it feels really complicated because okay, on the one hand, I have this like legal requirement on paper, and on the other hand, um, it's not like, oh, there's a problem, I report it, and there's support there to help the family. Like,
And it's fixed.
yeah, it's like I could be risking putting these children in a worse situation. Like I have no way of knowing.
Right.
And so that part is feels really hard. And I think that influences like examples I could think of. Some of the more obvious ones I can think of like things that we would be considered like legally neglect, but then you look into it and it's like maybe it's a single parent who has to work a ton of hours to have enough money. And so there's a kid who's like home alone a lot, or kids who are home alone a lot. Um, where you're like, yeah, that's not ideal. And what is the parent supposed to be doing? I mean, they don't like,
And like
uh,
how can we support a solution that might help? Yeah.
yeah, like, and knowing that that parent could lose their kids for it, like that scares me. And maybe this is where knowing details of the laws would be helpful because like maybe that wouldn't be what happened. Maybe there would be. So I would want to know, like,
Well,
yeah, maybe I can meet with the parent or kind of try to find like other people in the community who could hang out with the kids during those times or something.
or after school programs, or yeah, I had a thought and it's might be losing. Shoot. Yeah, well, one of the thoughts I was having is like, okay, oh yeah, here it is. It's like, okay, basically people are in therapy, or there's these issues or these dilemmas where we might need to like go outside the law to like solve it because there's societal issues. And like I do have like relatively diminished faith and like, trusting another like a system, calling CPS, like are they actually going to, and especially if, I'm the therapist, I'm probably the most deeply involved and intimately aware of like details, um and like passing it off to like another agency in a situation where is the end result, like do the ends justify the means, like is the end result going to be potentially more traumatizing, um or or is it actually going to be helpful? Like there are some situations where like a child being removed from like a really abusive family, like yeah, it's kind of worrisome, the foster care system. I know that there's a lot of issues there, but like could it be better? And also like, childhood development, what age are they? If we all know about like attachment and, is that going to be more disruptive to this child's development, removing them? Like, yeah, I I think that it's assessing risk feels like what's coming to mind, assessing like, are there workarounds, are there ways we can solve this problem? Um, to help maybe like reduce the impact of the trauma that's like accruing, and is the best solution like reporting, I think is, yeah, a lot of assessment and discernment I feel like goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really agree with that. And maybe some of it is also like forming relationships with people in the system, like who I trust more and who I can be like, hey, I'm going to make this report to you. And yeah, people who I know will like put in more time to figure out like the best thing for the family and the kid.
Yeah. Whew, it's big stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like just like other scenarios where I think it's kind of along the same lines of like your thought on, if the parent's not home, or if the parent is doing something that might be exposing the child to like things that aren't age appropriate, but it's a means to an end of like getting an income or something. Yeah.
Even just like the parent maybe doesn't know how that might be impacting the child. And so like it's if I have some conversations with them, maybe it's just a matter of education and like something that they could not do.
Yeah. 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 I think it's like, yeah, it for me feels like it's coming down to like what is going on, what need is being missed that's being met in a not great way, and are there other community supports, people, family relationships that could help like maybe meet a need, like how can we problem solve in a
Yeah.
way that, like reduces as much harm or more trauma.
Mhm.
I think the details of that are complicated.
Yes.
All right, do we feel good?
Yeah.